Hello, my name is Robert Linder, and I have been an amateur winemaker for almost 20 years. I produce a podcast on the internet called Winemaking Radio, and I've interviewed dozens of people who have been involved in making wine. So today, for my informational speech, I'd like to talk about how to make wine. I will talk about and hope to accomplish with this speech an understanding of the reasons and the benefits of making wine. I want to talk about the sources that you will use to make wine, the equipment that you will use to make wine, and finally the amount of time it takes to make wine. Okay, benefits, reasons. Well, first of all, wine has been around for millenniums. It's been part of our culture and our history for thousands of years. The Greeks had their god Dionysus, and the Romans had their god Bacchus. So certainly it's been culturally ingrained in what we've done for years and years and years, thousands of years. For medical reasons. Now, scientists are still trying to discover this, but for medical reasons they've discovered that the consumption of wine actually helps improve people's health. Specifically, red wine aids in the improvement of the health of your heart. Social reasons. Wine is a warm and enjoyable drink, and it's shared in many cultural gatherings and celebrations. And then finally, wine paired with food actually brings out and improves the taste of the food. We know that a lot of times a white wine with seafood or fish improves that experience. Red wine with pasta or with meats usually improves the experience. So there's definitely these reasons and benefits for making wine. So let's talk about, if I want to make wine, what sources of product do I use to make wine from? Well, I'm going to talk about three today. I'm going to talk about fruit, vegetables, and grapes. And I know technically grapes is a fruit, but it's on its own because of its nature and its complexity, and we'll get to that in a minute. So fruits and vegetables are readily available in the summertime here in Northern America. So if you have a garden or you have a neighbor or someone who has excess amount of fruit or vegetables readily available for you, it's an easy way to start making wine with minimum investment, because your product should be free or low cost. And even if you want to make, say, a blueberry wine in January, just go to the grocer, go to the frozen food section, buy a couple bags of blueberries, and you're on your way to making blueberry wine. Now, grapes, again, is a little bit different, and what I'm specifically talking about here is that grapes with seeds. Not the seedless grapes that you can get at a store in the summertime, but you want grapes that have seeds, because it's the skin of the grape, it's the flesh of the grape, and it's the seed of the grape. The seed which holds tannins, which really adds a certain, a higher level of complexity to making wine. And that's why most of the wines that you see at stores, those high-priced wines, they're made from grapes. And if you like a Chardonnay, or if you like a Cabernet Sauvignon, or you like a Syrah, those are actually the names of the grapes that those wines are made from. So feel free to, if you want to explore making wine from grapes, look at maybe getting those grapes with those names. Now, if you are unable to get grapes at the harvest time, you can still get those types of grapes either frozen or as a kit. And basically what they do is they harvest these grapes at harvest time, and in a kit form they evaporate the liquid from it. So it's in a concentrated form. All you do is reconstitute that syrup, and you have grape juice, and you can then make grape wine. So those are your sources, and I just wanted to mention that if you are interested in fruit and vegetable winemaking, there's a website called winemaking.jackkeller.net. And this gentleman has been around for, 20, 30 years, and he has a collection of hundreds of recipes of making wine from, you name it, rhubarb, raspberries, onions. There will be a recipe for it. So not a problem to find your recipes. So now that you have your fruit or vegetables, you have your recipe, what equipment do I need to make wine? Well, if you have access to a kitchen, you probably have at least half the equipment that you need. The first thing you're going to need is a pot for cooking. fruit and vegetable wine needs to be cooked. So more than likely you put it in here and you're going to cook it up over the stove. And you may need a spoon to stir while you're cooking. Once you've cooked this, you're going to put your wine into what we call a primary fermenter. So that's a bucket, and you're going to put that in there with some sugar and some yeast, and then you have what's called a fermentation lock, which when this starts fermenting and releases carbon dioxide, little bubbles will form, the carbon dioxide will release, and this will prevent airborne bacteria and oxygen from coming in and contaminating what is now going to be your wine. Once the fermentation is done, you're going to need a siphon hose, and you're going to siphon out the wine into a glass carboy. So you move that into here. It's called racking. And it's here where the wine will settle and it will become clear. If it doesn't become clear, you might have to, after about 3 or 4 weeks, you might have to move it yet to another container. But most of the time, it will clarify here. Once that's done, you're going to, once again, siphon that off into the bottles. And you're going to bottle your wine and you're going to cork it. So it's a pretty easy process. That's about the equipment that you're going to need to make wine. Now once you've made your wine, let's talk about how long it takes. Fruit and vegetable wine, again, is not a very complex wine, so therefore you can drink it sooner, but it doesn't last as long. So most fruit and vegetable wines you can consume about 2 months after you made it, and it's probably going to not be that fresh anymore about 9 to 12 months later. Interestingly enough, that's about the time where you get another harvest and you can make wine again. Wine made from grapes is a little bit different. Because of those complexities, it needs to actually mellow out. So if you make wine from grapes, you really want to wait at least a year, if maybe 2 years, before you actually drink the wine. I know that's kind of hard because you want to enjoy something that you made right away, but trust me, it's worth waiting. And because it's more complex and because it mellows out, it actually lasts longer. So a white wine typically would be consumed within you can start consuming it in about 9 months to a year, and you want to consume it within 1 to 2 years. A red wine, you want to wait 1 or 2 years before you start drinking it, and it can actually last 3 to 5 to 10 years, depending on how well the grapes were and how well you made the wine. So it's an easy, it depends on the type of source of grapes that you use or the fruit and vegetables, but it's something that can be consumed within 2 months to a year or two after you make it. So in conclusion, I would just like to say I hope you see or have understood some of the reasons and the benefits of making wine. I hope you understand that it doesn't really take much product to make wine is readily available. Equipment, half the equipment is probably already in your kitchen, and the other half can be readily available through the internet or at local wine and beer making supply stores. And there's a social aspect to it. Consuming wine, you can share it. People love when you share wine with them. Making wine is a very social experience. And so it's a great hobby to get into. I highly encourage you to give it a try. And even if you're not ready to try it, what I would suggest is find a friend who makes wine and offer to bring them a bottle of wine when they make their next winemaking thing. And I'm sure they're going to be more than happy to invite you and watch the process. So for all of my audience, I hope you've enjoyed this speech, and I hope you give winemaking a hobby a good choice. And I say to you, cheers.